Welcome, everybody, to Next Gen Leadership. I am your host, Jimmy Ryan. This is a talk about or for leaders, branch managers, people that aspire to be better branch managers, better leaders, better team leaders. And we welcome Gino and Sasha Stero. What's up, guys?
What's happening?
Hey.
So today we're going to talk about transactional versus relational. I said that a little weird. Transactional versus relational. And we kind of ended on a talk just mentioning this and like, hey, we should have a call about this. And me personally, I'm guilty of both. When I first started out, I was super transactional. Like I'm not caring about nothing. We're getting the dollars. But as I transitioned, I've lost that, and I've tended to be more of someone's friend and, go out and grab a beer, type of a deal. But you kind of lose the balance. And that's really what I want to talk about today is there a balance? And because we all know the person that's 100% transactional, and then we also know the person that's relational. The relational person has no money. The transactional person has no friends. We gotta be in the middle here somewhere. And Sasha, you are my goodness, networking goddess. You're like you're everywhere. You're Miss Relational, I would say. And what's your take on it? Is there a balance? Does balance even exist?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you have to look at your personality first, because some people do come in with a natural predilection to go towards the transactional side, and others will come in more with the relational side. And so depending on where your strong suit is, you got to pay attention to balancing it. And I do think there is a balance. I am more relational than transactional, and I've had moments where I've had to figure out where is the right time and place to bring the transaction into the conversation, because ultimately we are all out there trying to do business, regardless of what it is that we sell. We're selling something. And that's known. And I think people nowadays, it's not a mystery. People know, right? So that's okay. But I think there's a difference in how you approach it. And like I said, I think you got to start by looking at what your personality type is and where you naturally lean in versus where you may need to find that balance. As mentioned, am more relational. So I have to find a way to be more conscientious around, don't lose sight of, there is still a value exchange, I would say, I like, instead of the word transaction, that needs to occur at some point. And so though I want that deep, meaningful connection to be the priority, then at some point I've got to find a way to segue into a conversation that is more value-based so that we can get moving towards an actual transaction. So that's my take on it. Gino, what about you?
Yeah,
Do you believe this balance?
I'm guilty. I'm sometimes guilty of both. I think I'm more like an ambivert as it relates to that. Like part of that's because of my role too. When I was a loan officer, I definitely had a lot more transactional style conversations, right? Where I'm trying to push things toward a desired outcome. And I want to focus on that word desired outcome, because I think that's how you could still be relational, but know that there's a desired outcome. And so I'll give you an example. I went to lunch with a potential recruit last week. And we're hanging out and having fun. And we'd already talked about a bunch of stuff in our families. And unfortunately, had a conversation about why she lost her last job, and how that didn't work out and how difficult this market is and all that. And that opened the door for me. So we were being relational, but that opened the door for me to say, hey, by the way, I was hurt because you didn't call me when you lost your last job. I would have hired you in a minute. I'd love to have you on our team. So what I'm going to say is make your intentions of your desired outcomes known. It doesn't mean you're not relational, and that's not transactional. That's just letting them know, hey, I'd love you and I to work together. I think I could help you be more successful. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying those things. It's okay to talk about it in the open. In fact, if they were your friends, you would be telling them straight to their face exactly what you needed to tell them. So I think that being transactional is actually just a kind of like a facade. Those people that are more transactional, it's a facade for the fear they have of opening up to relationships. So I believe the best transactions come with relationships. So have the relationship first, make your intentions known, and be open and transparent about what you're trying to achieve and what your desired outcomes are. And then you can get the best of both worlds.
I
I
love
like
that.
just defining it as defined is a desired outcome. I think that it comes down to really just simple communication. Like if you have a friend that you're close with, you should just come around and say what you want. Hey, I need you to sign up for this class. Hey, I want you to do this. I need you to buy this product. And here's why. But like you kind of have to butter that a little bit too. Like, okay, what does Jimmy want? You know, he's calling me. I haven't heard from him in a long time. What does he want? So you know what I mean? You kind of have to balance that. Are you always calling and asking for something too? You know, because
We all know
there's
that
people,
person.
well, that's, I mean, we all get that, believe me. I mean, it's like, okay, what do you, like, get to the point almost. So, like, is there a relationship such that you can just go straight to the point? Because you kind of do have to butter up somebody that you don't have a strong enough relationship with. Oh, hey, how are your kids? I forgot their names. Oh, hey, wow, you're still in, you know, insert state that, no, I don't live there.
That brings up the point of authenticity. I don't even ask people their kids' names anymore. I have zero hope in my life that I'm ever going to remember that, so I don't even ask anymore.
Well, right.
It's not genuine for me to ask what your kids' names are if I plan on not remembering it. What did we say last week? If you're not going to do it, don't ask, or something like that. That's the reality. So
I think it was a don't apologize unless you're going to fix the behavior.
that thing. Yeah. But it's the same thing. So like, why would I ask somebody's names? I could barely remember my kids' names. How am I supposed to remember every person I come into contact's names? So don't ask stupid shit. That's a very high level tip right there. You know, like if you're gonna build relationships, and one thing that was funny is, so imagine that conversation, right? And so by the way, the outcome was, hey, this was a great meeting. I'd love to meet again next month. That was the outcome. That was her response, right? But I want to give you another one. We could have had a just fine lunch. We could have had fun. We could have talked about our kids. We could have talked about college. We talked about how long we've been married. We talked about all these great things. If I would have never expressed what my desire was, then I just would have been in the friend zone.
Right.
So that's what you're talking about, Jimmy, is like, we've all done it when we were like teenagers, right? You really like this person and you're like just in the friend zone, What happens? You stay in the friend zone. So
right.
If you don't make your outcome, your desired outcome public, and you're not able to be transparent about that, then I think that's where you fail with the relationship.
I do think there's a time frame, and it's different for every situation, where you're feeling out your audience, right? Sure. And you're learning about them and how they respond in general to communication. You know, do they warm to you naturally? Do they not? And you're leaning into like, how can I frame the desired outcome and my intention in a way that you're going to receive it well? And you don't know that necessarily. Just like, I'll walk up to somebody at a conference and immediately dive into a pitch. Like, no, that's gross, right? That is the transactional person. So if I'm trying to get to know the person genuinely, authenticity is a huge one. Like you said, if I'm being authentic and genuine about how I'm getting to know the person, it's not just me caring about who they are and what matters to them. It's also understanding how they communicate, because then I can understand what's going to land well and how I can position that transaction when the time is right.
I think it is timing. I think that's a big thing too, because in certain situations, you should just give your pitch right away. I mean, like truly, like it's kind of expected. Like don't beat around the bush. Like at an event, for instance, what do you do? What do you sell? I do this. Let's schedule a demonstration. You know what I mean? Like it needs to almost be direct like that. But then let's maybe have a beer later, you know?
And or you could be introduced to somebody in conversation and they're midstream talking about family vacation. And you're not going to be like, oh, by the way, guess what I do and what I sell? Like you're going to blend in. Right. So like, I think it depends. But yes, I don't think you should be scared to do it if the opportunity presents itself.
It's like comedy, right? Like, you know, when you've heard a great joke and you laugh your ass off and then you're like, I'm going to tell the same joke and it's going to be wonderful. And you tell the same joke, it sucks. Timing is everything in life. There's so many things that are important as it relates to timing. I'm going to withhold names because I don't want to share other people's stories publicly. But I met with somebody while I was at Total Expert Accelerate. And he says to me, this is a great story. I'm going to share it someday on stage. And I said, oh, okay, cool. He says, I went up to this person that I wanted to invest in my business. I had a negative bank account at the time. And I had this startup idea. And I said, hey, I'd love to set an appointment with you and show you all these ideas of things that I have. And that person said, hey, I don't have time for that. What is it you need? And he said, well, I need $350,000 to start this business, and this is my idea. And he goes, you got it. So reach out to my group next week, send the contract, and you'll have it next week. Changed their life and their direction forever, and it's one of the most successful people you all know. So
being prepared
and also the timing, and listen to what the guy said. I don't have time and I don't need the long pitch. Tell me your story now. So your audience, right? Know your audience. What does your audience want? Is your audience relationship first, or is your audience meat and potatoes? Right? And it might depend. Like someday I might be in a mood to listen to a story, and someday I might be like, hey, I'm super busy. What do you need?
Yep.
Right.
There it goes back to timing, I guess.
Yeah,
It
but
really
being
does.
prepared for pivoting based on what the timing presents. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that guy had a really damn good elevator pitch, and
and he knew exactly how much
one.
he needed, right? Like that's critical. Can you imagine walking up to an investor and being like, oh, well, 200 would help, $1 million would be better. Like he can't be wishy-washy. If when he says, let's get down to it, like, give me brass tacks, you better be ready. And you better have a precise number and a precise reason why you need that number.
Yeah, and the audience on that one is I mean, if the guy can stroke a $350,000 check, he is. Give me the details. Yeah. I want it done, and I want to get going.
I'm going to give you a yes or no answer in the next 30 seconds.
Yeah, move on.
Right, 100%.
You have a 60-second audition, and I'm going to respond within 30 seconds, and this 90 seconds will have achieved yes or no.
So, okay, someone that might be struggling, they might be a little bit too transactional. Someone that might be struggling, they might be a little bit too relational. Advice.
So what's too transactional? Like a cold caller?
I would say no.
Oh, I can give an example of that.
Okay, go ahead.
No,
the person at every conference that all they do is talk about what they sell, and like they have nothing else in their bag. That's it. That's all they do. And they drive you, and like even like they don't read the room. They don't pay attention to the cues. They don't understand how to like integrate into a social setting. And literally all they do is sound like a product engineer nerd. No offense, love you all, but that's what they sound like. And it's very like just abrupt, and you're like so out of place. It just doesn't fit. That's what I think of when I think of somebody that's like so transactional that I'm like, ew, gross, get away from me.
And I'll even go deeper. Like there's nothing at all. If there's no transaction, I'm not talking to you, not one bit. Like 100%. If there's nothing, if I'm not making money off of it, I'm not doing it. Which you could argue that might be a good thing, but
if you're at that level, I mean, yes, at some point you get to that level where like you don't have time for all the other things, but then you shouldn't be at a conference. That's not the right place for you. So, and I know we're kind of hyper focused on conference because we go to a lot of conferences,
right?
But I was thinking a little more down the sales side, where how do you now interact with your clients, right? And so right now the current struggle for loan officers is, I just got off the phone this morning with one of my loan officers. Says, hey, I made 17 refinance calls yesterday. When someone told me they want to wait till the actual Fed rate cuts come, I didn't feel like pushing them any harder. And I said, well, that's fair if that's your approach, but I would educate them. I would say that's totally cool, and I respect that, and I understand. I'm going to give you two counter arguments, not so that you can make a different decision, but just so you know, historically, there's such a thing as buy the rumor, sell the news. So the saying exists because sometimes the rumor gives you the result you want, and then when the news happens, it pulls back. Have you ever heard that? Right? That's one thing I would talk about. And the other thing I would talk about is bird in hand, right? Like, hey, if you're going to save $300 a month now, and you're going to recover it within 6 months, and you got to wait 6 months for me to refinance you anyway again, so you have nothing to lose. So those are conversations I would have had, and I don't think they're transactional conversations. But I thought those were relationship. They're educational. But my loan officer felt like, oh, if I did that, I'd be pushing them. I'd be a pushy salesperson. I'm like, no, it's just education. Don't mistake education for sales. Those are two different things. Now, they might go hand in hand, but they don't always have to. Look at Sasha. She's jumping out of her chair.
I'm like, because I actually see the loan officer's approach as transactional. And I love this example because it's way better than mine. So like throw mine out with the bathwater.
I like it too.
The guy, or is it a guy or girl?
It's a guy.
A guy. The guy calls just looking for an opportunity to refi. Like you're making calls, good job, but you're calling for the transaction of a refi. Gino is approaching it as I'm calling to add value and to make sure that I'm keeping up with my relationship in a way that adds value such that when the time is right, I will get the transaction. That may be today, that may be tomorrow. don't know, but we have opportunity to explore other options. Like just because somebody said, no, I'm waiting for Fed rate or the Fed to cut rates and rates to come down, just like you said, doesn't mean that's a no. That means that the way that you frame that transaction was a no. But you took that transactional based conversation and turned it into a relational conversation, which is, by the way, highly more likely to get the transaction. It's like such a convoluted but simple scenario, right?
Well, I think, for me, the refinance things is the way I see it. Okay. A refinance for me is someone I've already done business with that knows me, likes me, trusts me.
Yep.
Right.
So the first thing I have to do is probably apologize for not reaching out as often as I should have.
100%.
And not remembering your kids' names.
99.6% of all loan officers in the nation will need to apologize for not. But I wouldn't apologize. This is something else I learned along the way. Don't ever say I'm sorry. So what I would say is, hey, thank you for taking my call. Right? Thank them for something first. Don't apologize for anything. Thank you for taking my call. I meant to call you 100 times, and then things just got in the way. So you can make a little excuse in there, but don't use the words I'm sorry. People just like freak out when they hear the word I'm sorry. And then say, look, I know that there's a lot of talk about rates coming down right now. I want to know, at what point do you think it would help your family if I could save you $200, $300, or $400 a month? When would it become important to you for us to take action? Ask the question. Don't just call them and say, rates are low. Do you want it? No, I don't want it. Nobody wants that. Right? It's like, ask me what I want. Maybe he says, you know what? This house doesn't suit me right. Would this help me if I was trying to sell my house and buy a different house? So ask first before you sell something. There's relational versus transaction. Find out what the hell's going on in that person's life. What if they have cancer? They don't give a shit about a refinance.
Right. I think it's a balance. I really do. I think it's a balance. If you're calling to say, "Hey, rates dropped to 4%. I want you to refinance right now." Well, look, 4%. Okay, that's a bad example. But I guess the point is that
with that, if you're able to say that right now, the answer is yes for everyone.
And look, I got to give kudos to dude having 17 conversations. That's well over the average loan officer, and I'm sure there's a lot more calls that had to happen to get to the 17. I'm sure he didn't actually connect with everybody that he actually called. But if you call and you're offering it in a sense that, like, look, what's your strike point? When are you going to actually, take advantage of this? Okay, great. Well, I'm glad that we connected, and I'll call you when that happens. But it's more of I'm calling because I care. I care about your financial wellness, as opposed to I'm just trying to cram a refinance down your throat, which I think a lot of people are doing that. And I want to pivot this really quick to one other thing: real estate agents or just business partners in general. Man, they're sick of being called. They're all sick of being called. And I talk to them nationwide all the time. Yeah, I got one loan officer a day calling me, offering to take me out to lunch. So now let's talk about relationships now with real estate agents. What's the balance there? Because what's my value? What am I really giving you value? Am I really actually getting to know you? Or is it just because I want your referrals? Of course I want your referrals, but do you base it off of that? Or are we trying to figure out, hey, are we even friends? Do we even work well together? And I think that's kind of the balance for me. What would you say, Gino?
Look, I think that this is touchy, but a lot of us have let's go back to 2 meetings ago. A lot of us have no integrity as it relates to our sales pitch with our business partners.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I'm going to help you grow your business. Do you?
Yeah.
Ever?
Yeah.
Hey, in order for now, where you need to take it next, the reason it's not successful is because you don't do the things it requires to be able to do that.
Right.
How about if you reached out and said, hey, Jimmy, listen, I know you get calls from loan officers every day. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but if I could set an appointment with you and show you my 10-step program to getting you 3 listing appointments a month, would you give me your time? It's what's in it for them. If you're making a cold call to these people, you've already probably have some sort of pre-established relationship, some sort of in the market, each other. Don't talk about loans. for Christ's sake, everybody should be able to do loans. So
And close
don't
on
talk
time.
about loans. The only thing they care about is how am I going to help your bottom line? And then you have to say, well, then in that top 10 things that you've got to do, Sasha, is you have to say, and this is Todd Duncan speaking, now we have to set our 4 weekly appointments for the next 4 weeks so we can build the business plan so I can do what I said I was going to do for you. So
Right.
that's starting with transactional because they need to hear what it is you're selling, but moving to relational, saying, let's spend some time together and make sure that we put together a cohesive plan so I can do what I said I was going to do for you. They go together. I don't think they're
really
one or
do.
the other. I think they when you make them coexist appropriately, I think that's when the magic happens.
You have to state your desired outcome is what you do. You have to state it. You can't just hide it. Like everybody knows what you want, so you might as well just say it and then actually be, direct about it, but be, I don't know, adult enough, mature enough to ask for it. But then there has to be something behind the scenes. There has to be a little bit of like get to know you along with it. Because truth be told, there's some people I will just not work with. I just won't. I could get every referral in the world for them. I don't want to work with you. But I've identified that. And I think that real estate agents the same way. There's a ton of that. What do you think, Sasha?
I agree. I was thinking the same example, but rather than helping them with listings, I was thinking think about a neighbor or a friend that's considering whether they should put their house on the market and they're looking for a real estate agent to talk to about it, right? And offer that up or, whatever to your point, that you can offer that's of value. So I love that. I think all of it speaks to be intentional before you pick up the phone, right? Like that loan officer calling 17 people. Yeah, that is great. And you've got to have the funnel because the more you put in, the more you're going to get out, but also, quality in, quality out, crap in, crap out. So whether you're calling the real estate agent, whether you're calling a refi potential customer, whoever it is you're calling, I think you really need to sit down and be intentional ahead of that phone call, because it's not just being able to state that desired outcome on the call or in person when you're with them. It's thinking about what is it that I'm trying to get out of this relationship and how do I foster that now and long term? And depending on how this person responds to me, what are other feathers I have in my cap that I can pull out so that I can really feed into this and actually see it for the long haul, not as just a short term, I've got something on my list I need to check off today to say I did it.
100%. We're
wow,
past
we're
time.
Speechless.
Well, you were going in and out for a second, so I was. We heard all of it though.
Oh shoot!
It was good.
Yeah,
no, we heard it, but it was just had to really focus. We're like, what are you saying?
You had to be intentional about me telling you to be intentional.
We cared. So I think here, Gino, we're past time. So I want to wrap this up. I would say here to wrap this up, be authentic, care, be a friend, but state your desired outcome. Don't be afraid to say and ask for the sale. Like, this is what I want, but don't just be so cold about it. Actually be a friend, actually care, be authentic, be you. And
so now it's my turn to ask, if you're watching this, please follow the Momentum Builder private community. Please join us.
There you go.
Right? You teed me up for that, Jimmy.
We need some transaction. We need some transaction here.
Blood, right? We were being relational all these weeks. Now I'm saying, please, I want you to join our community so we can have more of you in it.
100%. All right. Well, this has been Next Gen Leadership, and I want to thank Sasha Stair, Gino Fronte, and I am Jimmy Ryan. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Have a good week.